Hello and welcome everyone on this official platform of Legacy IAS Academy. So today we are going to discuss the questions of GS paper 2 on the topic governance and international relations. Yes. So recently UPSC has conducted its mains examination, and last week, that is on Sunday, as well as on Saturday, mains examination was there. So today I am going to discuss GS paper 2 on topics international relations and governance. Okay. Now, so in paper there were 4 questions from international relations. 4 questions. Now this time UPSC has asked the question from COD. Okay, COD. Then the question was there from BRICS. Clear? Then diaspora, har saal ek question you will get from diaspora. This is very important and this topic is mentioned in your syllabus. UPSC has not asked, you can say, kind of like out of the syllabus. No, everything was in the syllabus. Clear? So they have asked these questions. Okay. So based on these things, clear? So BRICS plus, so like these kind of things are there. Then they have also asked 4 questions from governance on different topics. Clear? So this time UPSC's main focus on COD, BRICS, diaspora, and all these events are related to current affairs. Fine. So first we are going to discuss the question from governance. Now what are the questions which are there with respect to governance? So the first question, as you can see here, 6th question, okay, which means polity ka weight is zyada tha. Yes, that is true. Fine. So and 3 questions are also from social justice. Fine. Okay. So we are going to discuss governance and IR. So the first question here is, does India's tribal development policy reflect the aspirations for a socially grounded and equity based governance? Justify your answer. Now whenever justification is asked, remember this thing in examination, what you should do. Okay, the statement is given, you have to justify this statement with all facts and figures. Fine. So in this you have to give the facts, proper facts, okay, evidences. Fine. Okay. Now first we will see the keywords. Now what is the keyword here? India's tribal development policy. Now first of all your introduction. So what you can write in the introduction? See, your introduction should have some sort of constitutional provisions. Now what are the constitutional safeguards related to the tribal development? So first important thing you can mention about 5th and 6th schedule. Fine. 5th and 6th schedule. You can mention about article 244. Clear? 244. Then tribal development policy. Then you can also mention about the article 275. Yes, article 275 subclause 1. These are the articles that you can mention. Along with, you can also mention about the laws related to panchayats. Clear? Because socially grounded and equity is there. Okay. So your introduction should look like based on these this statement. So you can mention regarding the constitutional safeguards which are under these particular articles. Then you can mention the laws with respect to the panchayat, like yes, you can mention about the PISA Act 1995. Clear? PISA Act 1995. Clear? That is extension to schedule. So this act got extension to schedule areas in 1995 to 96. You can mention. Clear? Then you can also mention about the Forest Right Act. So these things you can give proper introduction in 3 to 4 lines. Fine. So all these things, they actually talk about the tribal autonomy as well as social justice. Clear? Now the most important keyword in this question is social. Now it reflects aspirations for socially grounded and equity based governance. Two things. First thing is socially grounded and then equity based features with respect to tribal development policy UPSC has asked. Now, what are the things that you can mention? Okay, so you can mention about the tribal community rights in the body of the answer. Fine. Tribal community rights. Now, what are the things that you can mention under this community rights? So, you can mention about the Forest Right Act 2006. So, Forest Right Act, so it actually recognizes whom? It actually recognizes the individual, as well as whole tribal community rights over the forest areas. Clear? So, why this act came? So, you can mention to correct historical mistakes or injustice. Fine. This is the relevance. Clear? Then you can also mention that through this, with this act, they will get what? Livelihood security. So when we talk about livelihood security of the tribals, you can also mention about the MFP, minor forest produce. Clear? Then when tribal communities, they will perform together, what kind of governance it is? You can mention about the participatory governance. Fine, you can mention about participatory governance. Now this PISA Act, PISA Act empower. Now in this you can mention about PISA Act, it empower the Gram Sabha. Clear? So it empower what? It empower Gram Sabha over local resources. Clear? So you can mention these things. So this is also mentioned in this, and in this around 10 states are mentioned in scheduled areas. So you can mention all these things. Clear? Then you can also mention about, like the question is asking about equity also. So with respect to equity, you have to mention the points. Clear? Like you can mention about the target based equity. Target based equity. Now here you can mention about various schemes. Clear? Like Pradhan Mantri Janjati Adivasi Maha Abhiyan jo tha, that is PM Janman. Clear? You can mention in this scheme PM Janman. These schemes you can mention. Then you can also mention that in this the targets are 75 around PVTZs, particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Then apart from this, you can also mention about the Dharti Aba Janjatiya Gram Utkarsh Abhiyan. Yes. Hello. So you can mention about the scheme. This Dharti Aba Janjatiya Utkarsh Abhiyan. So in this you can mention about the facts. If you are able to recall the facts, like around 63,000, around 63,000 tribal majority villages are there. And remember this thing, in this the benefit kitne logo ko mila hai, so you can mention about 5 to 6 crore tribal people, 5 to 6 crore tribal people got benefit from this. Clear? So these things are there. But however, the gap persists. Now what are the gaps? What are the gaps? Like implementation, weak implementation is there. So gaps like weak implementation, you can mention weak implementation is there. Clear? Now with respect to legacy IAS current affairs, so you can go through our current affairs magazine also. This data was already there in our current affairs magazine in February 2026, that only 25.38 lakh, yes, 25.38 lakh of 54 lakh claims, that is 47%, they are filed under Forest Right Act. It has been approved. Clear? Then another important weakness here is, see, when we talk about development, it also induced what? It also induced displacement. Clear? Like mining, dams, infrastructure projects, these things have conflict between the development and community based rights. Clear? Like you can give the recent example. Recent example आप क्या mention कर सकते हैं? You can give recent example like Cane Betwa project. Clear? Cane Betwa project phase 1. Clear? Which actually displays around 1900 project affected families are there. So these things you can mention, and then you can give the way forward. है ना? At last you can mention what? You can mention way forward. Now what are the things? So way forward can be your conclusion also. So what can be the way forward? That how you are going to strengthen the tribal governance. है ना? So what are the important things here? Implement Forest Right Act effectively, PISA Act effectively. These acts should be you can say like implemented effectively. Then you can also mention about the Bhuria Committee. You can mention about Bhuria Committee of 1995, their recommendations you can mention. Then they should ensure the participatory form of governance. Clear? So human development gaps should be bridged. So all these things are important. I hope this much is clear. So this is how you should attempt this question. Fine? Okay. I hope this much is clear. So you can go through our current affairs. So all these data are already provided. Fine? Okay. Now next question. Now question number 8. Now what is question number 8 here? As you can see, this is also from governance only. Governance. Fine. The question here is, analyze the advantages and limitations of generalist structure of Indian civil services in contemporary governance. Yes. Wonderful question, I would say. Clear? First they have mentioned about generalist character or generalist structure. So let me tell you, you can start your introduction from this only. Fine. So how you are going to write the introduction? Clear? So first of all, you can mention about the generalist character. So generalist character of Indian civil services, it actually enables, of Indian civil services, it actually enables, so enables what? It actually enables the administrator, to function across diverse sector. That means कोई civil servant किसी एक area में specialize नहीं है ना? That means these are kind of you can say generalist, and they have to function across diverse sector as well as diverse region, and that actually ensure administrative continuity as well as policy coordination. Clear? So these are the things you can mention. Now it is saying analyze the advantages and limitations. Two things you have to write. आपने introduction लिखा. Now second important thing that you have to write the advantages. Clear? Now what are the advantages? First important thing that you can mention about holistic governance. Yes, you can mention about holistic governance. Like IAS officers, they integrate economic, social and administrative dimensions rather than operating in departmental silos. These things you can mention. Then you can mention about second point, you can mention unity and neutrality. Yes, unity and neutrality, this is very important. Unity and neutrality. Now why it is important, unity and neutrality? See, because the common recruitment किसके through होता है? Common recruitment happen through a body called as UPSC. Clear? it actually gives, or it actually fosters an all India outlook. They give constitutional values and political neutrality. Clear? Then you can mention about the crisis management also. Hello? This is also very important. How crisis management? These generalists, they can coordinate with multi-agency response during the disaster, pandemic, COVID के time में आप देखिए, है ना? So they have coordinated through multi-agencies, like with health sector also. Fine. So these things you can easily mention, and then you can mention about the field orientation. Yes. Another point that you can mention, field orientation, like how district administration enables implementation of welfare schemes at grassroots level. They gain the experience in implementing Manrega, है ना? Like they gained experience with respect to grassroots schemes like Manrega. This much is clear. So, or disaster relief programs, है ना? These things can actually improve subsequent policy designs. Now there are limitations also. Now what can be the limitations? Now what can be the limitations here? First important thing you can mention, specialization deficit. Specialization की कमी है. Clear? Specialization deficit. Now when we talk about specialization deficit, like complex domains are there, like today AI, climate finance, cyber security, public health, all these things actually require technical expertise, but still the old generalist mindset is dominating. Clear? Then another limitation is frequent transfer. Frequent transfers, clear, like short tenure, है ना? शॉर्ट टेन्योर से क्या होता है? इट एक्चुअली वीकन द इंस्टीट्यूशनल मेमोरी एज वेल एज पॉलिसी कंटिन्यूटी विल नॉट बी देयर. फाइन. देन यू कैन मेंशन अबाउट द जनरलिस्ट, समटाइम्स जनरलिस्ट स्पेशलिस्ट फ्रिक्शन. Generalist specialist friction is also there. Like technical professionals, they have very limited influence over the decision making. Clear? And then bureaucratic risk or bureaucratic inertia you can mention. Like you can mention about the procedural orientation, है ना? A procedural orientation इतना ज़्यादा होता है, it can actually impede the innovation, outcome based governance. Clear? And at last you have to mention the way forward in this question, because if you are mentioning the limitation, give the way forward. That they should adopt what kind of thing, like domain based postings. Postings कैसी होनी चाहिए? Way forward, है ना? They should go for domain based postings. Clear? Second important thing that you can mention, continuous capacity building approach should be there. Clear? Then third important thing, generalist coordination role. Yes, generalist coordination role. Now why it is important? So let me tell you, generalist coordination role, in this way contemporary governance, it actually requires generalists with specialized competence also. Fine. And there is no choice between the two. They have to work. Continuous capacity building should be there, coordination should be there. So in this you can mention the important scheme like Mission Karma Yogi. Very important thing. You have to give the facts also. Mission Karma Yogi. Clear? So Mission Karma Yogi through technology enabled training. Clear? On the IGOT. Clear? That is Karma Yogi platform. Clear? Then you can also mention about capacity building commission. Capacity building commission should also be there. CBC. So these things are important for your answer. Clear? This is how you should attempt this question. Clear? Okay. Now the next question. Question number 9. This is something related to the international relations. Fine. Okay. Now this is related to international relation. Now what is the question? IPMDA, Indo-Pacific Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness, bridges the gap between India's Sagar, that is security and growth for all in the region, that is India's vision, and Quad's collective Indo-Pacific strategy. Now make a critical assessment of the statement focusing on this. You have to make the critical assessment focus on this IPMDA. तो basically ये statement क्या कह रहा है ना? What this statement trying to say? See, IPMDA bridges the gap between India's Sagar vision and Quad collective Indo-Pacific strategy. तो सबसे पहले मैं क्या करूंगा, जो माइंड में फ्रेमवर्क बनाना, हाउ आई एम गोइंग टू क्रिएट द फ्रेमवर्क. सो फर्स्ट आई विल राइट दिस IPMDA bridges the gap between Sagar and Quad collective Indo-Pacific strategy. Fine? Okay. Now, when we write this, so try to understand India has its own maritime vision. What is India's maritime vision? Sagar. This is India's own maritime vision. That is Sagar. Clear? Quad is actually a collective maritime security. Quad is a collective maritime security. Fine. Now who is going to bring? So when we talk about collective maritime security, it talks about free, open as well as secure Indo-Pacific region. In this scenario, this IPMDA, clear, it actually provides the practical maritime cooperation between the two. So this is something related to practical maritime cooperation between two. That means Sagar and Quad collective measure. But question क्या कह रहा है? Question is saying you have to make a critical assessment focusing on IPMDA. So this is where many aspirants they lose marks. Don't write IPMDA is excellent initiative, wonderful initiative, it strengthen the Quad as well as Sagar. No. You must ask this question, does IPMDA really bridge the gap completely? This is the demand of UPSC. Whether this IPMDA really bridge the gap completely? Not entirely. Then mention limitations. Clear? Now I would like to tell you the context why UPSC asked this question. See, what is the core initiative here? Core initiative is IPMDA. Now when this initiative was launched, this was launched in 2022. Clear? Where it was launched? In Tokyo Summit. Tokyo Quad Summit. It was launched. Fine. Now, what is IPMDA? It actually provides satellite based tracking data. It provides satellite based tracking data. Fine. This is you have to mention. Clear? Or satellite based tracking based data in island and coastal nations across Indo-Pacific region. Now why it is relevant? Because it is still a wonderful case study in international relations. Why? Let me tell you, because it actually showcases how Quad uses soft security. You know what is soft security? Soft security means data sharing, tracking data, tracking dark shipping, clear, combating illegal fishing. All these things are there rather than you can say formal military pacts to counter the regional threats. Clear? So you need to understand the three core elements: Sagar, Quad strategy and IPMDA. Clear? So IPMDA क्या है? It is a kind of non-military technology driven initiative used by commercial, which they are going to use commercial satellite radio frequency. Clear? Why they are going to use this? To monitor unflagged vessels, है ना? Second, illegal fishing and dark shipping in real time. So how you are going to write the introduction? Clear? So simply you can mention the introduction from here itself. You can take the introduction from here, है ना? You can define IPMDA simply. Then you can mention its 2022 code origin. Then you can mention it operates across the 3 sub-regions. Now what are those 3 sub-regions? 3 sub-regions, that is Southeast Asia, South Asia, and then Pacific Islands. These things you can mention in your introduction. Clear? Now, how you are going to write the body of the answer? So part 1 of this question, you will mention how IPMDA bridges Sagar and Quad. First thing you have to mention, how IPMDA bridges the gap, you know, between Sagar and Quad. Clear? This thing you can mention. So you can mention in this like various important things, like Sagar emphasizes on non-threatening cooperation. It is something you can mention about this, non-threatening cooperation. Clear? Then IPMDA focuses on non-military threats, you can mention. Clear? These things you can mention. And remember this thing, it acts as a provider for regional public goods rather than anti-China military bloc. These things you can mention. Then it also talks about Indian leadership. Yes, it also shows Indian leadership in this region. Indian leadership you can mention. Clear? Because it routes data through the regional hubs, like you can say India's information center. Clear? Now India's information fusion center, which is Indian Ocean center in Gurugram region. Clear? Then you can mention about strategic autonomy. With this it also shows strategic autonomy. Then what are the things that you can mention about this thing? You can tell about maritime security. Fine. You can mention about maritime security. You can mention about information sharing. You can mention about capacity building, disaster response, all these things. Then this is how you have to write. Then what would be the part 2 of your answer? Second part would be on critical assessment. Clear? Now what are the limitations in this? Limitations you have to mention. Limitations. First limitation would be data sharing concern. Yes, data sharing concern. Then second, capacity asymmetry. Capacity asymmetry. Clear? This thing you can mention. Then third thing, awareness is not equals to deterrence. This thing you can mention. Then Quad's non-aligned nature, risk of securitization, all these things you can mention. At last you can talk about the conclusion. Conclusion should be neutral, that IPMDA is the bridge, but it is not the destination. It acts as a bridge but not the goal. It can actually transform the Sagar's philosophy and Quad's strategic objective into practical maritime cooperation. Fine. And it also gives India to keep inclusive and transparent and respectful of sovereignty approach. So these things you can mention easily in this. Fine? Okay. Now the next question is related to BRICS. So this is something, again, it is related to international relations. Fine. So this is also related to international relation. Now BRICS act as a powerful counterweight in global governance, actively amplifying the voice and influence of global South. Explain the role of BRICS in projecting itself as an alternative to other groupings. Yes, it is something related to West and anti-West attitude. So basically I would like to tell you first of all what UPSC is trying to ask here. How BRICS present itself as an alternative to the Western dominated groupings. है ना? How this BRIC represent, clear, anti-Western groupings. Remember this thing. It is like alternative. Clear? Like for example, Western dominated groupings, if you see, what are the Western dominated groupings? So Western dominated groupings like G7 you can mention, IMF, World Bank, all these things you can mention easily. Clear? And BRICS you can mention in your introduction also, act as a voice for developing nations. Fine, it acts as a voice for developing nations like global South. So this question also requires you to evaluate the challenges that BRICS is facing in fulfilling this role. है ना? तो क्या BRICS challenges face कर रहा है? So why UPSC asked this question? Let me tell you why UPSC asked this question. Okay, you must have heard the term BRICS plus. Okay, so recently what happened, that various new members are added in the BRICS, and that has become what? BRICS plus. Like Egypt in BRICS plus, like Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, clear, and other members are there, clear, UAE. So now BRICS actually represent over 40% of world population and roughly a third of global GDP. Second important thing, de-dollarization. Fine, de-dollarization, and BRICS also represent what? Multipolarity. De-dollarization, multipolarity. So global South increasingly wanted the alternative with respect to the financial mechanisms, clear, as well as the trade routes, so that they can protect itself from the Western sanctions, clear, and economic shocks of Western world, and also high debt burdens. These things are there. So we need to understand what UPSC is trying to ask here. They are actually trying to ask that what is the role of BRICS first of all with respect to the global governance counterweight, clear, then how it is representing the global South. These things we have to mention. So how you are going to write the introduction? First of all, introduction we have already discussed. You can mention BRICS plus. You can start with the BRICS plus, clear, or start with the BRICS simply. How BRICS today act as a multipolar economic and geopolitical bloc. Clear? This is something multipolar economic and geopolitical bloc. So this thing you can mention easily, आप लिख सकते हैं, है ना? So it actually you can say it has share with respect to the global trade, resources, population. So it acts as a major platform for global South diplomacy. Clear? Then you can mention about how BRICS act as a powerful counterweight in global governance. Counterweight role you have to mention. Clear? तो counterweight role में आप क्या लिखेंगे with respect to the counterweight role? Counterweight role like financial alternatives. Clear? You can mention about the financial alternatives, है ना, like BRICS का बैंक कौन सा, NDB, New Development Bank. So there are financial development, financial alternative with respect to the Bretton Woods. Clear? Then second important thing, you can mention about the trade and economic sovereignty also, which is something related to the de-dollarization. De-dollarization was in the news since last 2 to 3 years regularly. Clear? So de-dollarization, because BRICS is actually promoting the bilateral trade. It promoting what? Bilateral trade, that too in local currencies. Clear? Like rupee, ruble, yuan, है ना? So likewise, this is actually vulnerability to US dollar, है ना? US dollar fluctuation. Then BRICS also play very important role with respect to creating agenda, creating reforms. You can mention reforms. Fine. Like in United Nations Security Council, BRIC countries like India, Brazil, they are asking for the expansion of United Nations Security Council members and reforms in United Nations. Clear? So CBDR you can mention, common but differentiated responsibilities. Fine. Then you can mention about the energy security also. Then with respect to the limitation, what are the challenges to the BRICS alternative vision? तो अब challenges क्या है? Challenges would be, challenges, it is like a block between anti-Western and non-Western. Like if you see anti-Western countries like Russia, China, non-Western countries like India, Brazil. Clear? These countries are there. So it actually maintains the balanced approach. है ना? They maintain the tie. They maintain ties with both the sides. Clear? Then second important thing is bilateral issues. Like bilateral issues between India and China. India, China. Clear? These things are there. So sometimes it also creates hurdle while taking the decision. Then there is, you can say, a no proper institutional binding. Clear? Because BRICS do not have a proper charter, institutional charter is not there. Clear? And then economic, you can say differences are there. Vast differences in the economic structures. Exchange rate policies are different, currency stability is different. Clear? So it actually creates hurdle while establishing a unified BRIC currency. Clear? So it is difficult in the near term that BRICS currency will come, and at last you can give the conclusion or way forward. Clear? So these things you can mention that how, and conclusion should be, you have to mention like how BRICS representing the global south priorities. Clear? While it also uphold its strategic autonomy. Clear? These things you can mention. Fine. Okay. Now next question. Now this question, I hope this much is clear. Fine. And you can write down your doubts in the comment section. Clear? We will address all your doubts. Fine. Now next question is question number 16. This is something related to the governance. Clear? That transparency and accountability in governance. Transparency and accountability, two terms are there. They are not about controlling corruption, but about creating the trust. If stakeholders in policy process by following the rule of law and participatory governance. Wonderful question. है ना? Transparency and accountability in building stakeholder trust. These two keywords are favorite with respect to the governance. Every year they ask one question from this topic. Clear? Now, why transparency and accountability is important? See, they actually underpin the democratic legitimacy. Clear? These two things, transparency and accountability. These two terms, है ना? they actually shows what? Democratic legitimacy. Fine, democratic legitimacy. Clear? Because with these two things, transparency and accountability, they make governance open, answerable and predictable. Clear? Now the question is asking, it is not about only controlling corruption but also creating the trust if stakeholders in policy process by following the rule of law and participatory governance. So what is the role in building stakeholder trust? They are actually asking. Clear? This is how you can write the introduction. This line you can take it as introduction only. Clear? Now how will you write the body of the answer? What is the role in building stakeholder trust? Clear? Like you can mention about the transparent rule and reason decisions. First point you can mention this. Clear? Then you can also reflect the article number 14. Article 14. Clear? So it also reflect what? Article 14. It also reflect the CAG audits. CAG audits. Then parliamentary committees. Clear? Parliamentary committees which ensure what? It ensure the scrutiny. Then RTI Act 2005, you can mention about the RTI Act 2005. This act you can mention, and RTI Act of 2005 you can mention about section 4. Now why section 4 is important? Because it enables the proactive disclosure and informed participation. Clear? Then you can also mention about the Gram Sabhas under 73rd and 74th. Clear? 73rd amendment. So you can mention about 73rd amendment. Then you can mention about बहुत सारे examples है like Manrega social audits. Yes, these things you can mention about, with actually shows the transparency and all. So these things you can mention. Then you can mention about the good governance index which covers the 10 sectors and 58 indicators. Clear? Clear? Now second important thing, you have to mention the challenges. Now what are the challenges? Challenges is you can mention delayed or inaccessibility or delayed inaccessible information. Clear? Then you can mention about weak grievance redressal mechanisms. Clear? Then you can mention about digital divide. Yes, digital divide. Clear? It can create actually formal rather than meaningful accountability. Then you can give the way forward. Clear? So with respect to way forward, you can actually mention about adopt open by default machine readable data. Then second you can mention strengthen Gram Sabhas. Then the most important thing which was there in the news, CP grams. CP grams. Now CP grams actually it is important. Why? You can improve the CP grams, then you can disclose the stakeholder input which is shaped by decisions. So this is how at last you can mention, this is how the transparency and accountability transform the citizens from passive recipient into the government stakeholder or governance stakeholder. This is something which is important. Clear? And at last you can also mention about government slogan. जैसे for example our prime minister said our belief is on minimum government, maximum governance. These things you can mention. Fine. Now next question 17. This is also related to governance only. This is again related to governance. Clear? Now what is the question? Can the constitutional mandate of rights-based welfare be effectively realized in the context of non-integrated governance and minimal public investment? Examine. Yes. Now this question, if you see, this actually talks about the right-based obligation. Clear? Let me tell you, Indian constitutional provisions or Indian constitutional reflects welfare not like a charity. If in our constitution welfare provisions are there, so it does not reflect the charity. It actually reflect what? It reflect the right-based welfare, right-based obligations. Now, what are the right-based obligations? This is how you are going to write the introduction. That Indian constitution shows the welfare not as charity but right-based obligation. You can mention the articles in your introduction of the answer. Like article 14 you can mention, article 39, article 43 you can mention, article 41, then article 47. These are some important articles, and these articles are also reinforced by the judicial expansion of the right to life. Clear? Then you can mention in the body of the answer. So if I ask you what are the constitutional foundations for right-based welfare? So article 21, that is very important. Why article 21 is important? Because judiciary expanded to take the right to health, livelihood, shelter, dignity, everything. Then article 21A also you can mention right to education. Then through Right to Education Act 2009, then you can mention about article 39, 41 and 43. These three articles. Clear? It talks about what? It talks about social security. Fine. This thing you can mention. Then you can also talk about the Manrega institutionalize the food and livelihood entitlement. Clear? So in this way we can mention that India is moving towards a kind of citizen, you can say citizen based governance. Clear? Now what are the, now it is asking the examine and starts from the can. Clear? Now what are the hurdles with respect to the right-based welfare under the fragmented governance? So what are the hurdles? So what are the hurdles under this? Clear? First thing is like departmental problems are there, like you can mention about the nutrition, health, livelihoods. Now when we talk about nutrition, health, now all these things, livelihoods are interdependent but institutionally fragmented. Clear? Then you can mention about federal fragmentation. Now federal fragmentation, when we talk about federal fragmentation, center, state, local overlaps. It can dilute or diffuse the responsibility. So here center, state, local, it diffuse responsibility. Clear? These things you can mention. Then weak local capacities there, like panchayat, urban local bodies. Clear? Weak local governance, like panchayats. Clear? Then you can give the example also here, Poshan Abhiyan. Fine. Poshan Abhiyan. Poshan Abhiyan actually shows that malnutrition requires the convergence of this ICDS, health, sanitation, drinking water, etc. So these things you can mention. Clear? So these things easily you can mention. Now, what are the other things you can mention? Like education rights. Clear? Because the question is also about, in the context of non-integrated governance and minimal public investment. Yes, minimal public investment. Now, with respect to this, you can mention about the educational rights. Now, educational rights basically requires teachers, schools and digital infrastructure, which is not sufficient. Then, if you talk about health rights, now this health rights, it actually requires the personal, medicines and diagnostic. Then you can mention about inadequate provisioning, which actually creates a quality deficit. Quality is not there in the rural areas. Clear? So this is how you can mention. Now, but when you write answer after the challenge, you have to give certain reports also, and also you have to mention that how government is performing. Clear? So you can mention like, however, the progress is visible. Now, how progress is visible? You have to provide facts. So here you have to mention the facts. So you can give the example of economic survey. You can give the example from economic survey of 2024 to 25. In this economic survey report, you can mention about that social services expenditure rising from 3%. Clear? Rising from 3% government expenditure in financial year 21. So today in 25 it rose to 26.2. So today it rise 26.2%. The expenditure, that means government start expending more. So progress is visible. Clear? And what is the government's share in total health expenditure? So if you see total health expenditure, government share is increased. Clear? From 29 to 48%. Total share of government in health increased from 29 to 48%. These kind of data you have to mention. Clear? So overall you can mention, however, that integration as well as efficiency can partly compensate. Clear? So apart from this, you can also mention about the DBT JAM, DBT direct benefit transfer, and JAM, it has reduced the leakages, while the economic survey, if you see 2025 to 26, it stresses more on convergence and outcome based oriented governance. So now today government is focusing on outcome based governance. So this is how you can attempt this question. For this question, you should have a sort of current affairs data, I would say. Fine. So this is how you have to attempt this question. Now 19th question, which is again related to international relations. India's global diaspora act as a living bridge. Act as a living bridge. As a critical economic factor, knowledge network in transforming cultural heritage into geopolitical influence and strategic leverage worldwide. Critically examine this statement. Now, if you see digital, or you can see diplomatic footprint, first of all, let me tell you, Indian diaspora, clear? It is the largest in the world. They hold high ranking political offices like in UK, United States of America, Guyana region, Singapore, etc. And Indian diaspora is also leading the tech giants like Microsoft, Google, clear, Adobe. All these are important things. You should know all these basic things. Clear? Then when we talk about the economic engine or economic factor, India consistently tops global remittance ranking, and our remittance exceeded more than $110+ billion. It actually offers crucial foreign exchange stability. So diaspora act as a soft power. Clear? This is how we should understand. Clear? So when it is saying diaspora act as a living bridge, as a critical economic factor, clear, and cultural heritage also. Fine. So how cultural identity, preservation of cultural identity through festivals, yoga, cuisine, Bollywood, it actually enhances India's soft power and creates goodwill among the host population. Fine. So how you are going to write this answer? So first we'll talk about the introduction. So how you are going to define introduction here? So here, first of all, in introduction, this question is related to diaspora, and then the segments which includes your living bridge. है ना? So you have to define diaspora briefly. You have to define. Clear? And then you can mention it act as a India's people to people, India's people to people bridge in the world. This is how you can define. Clear? Now the part 1 of the question, why diaspora is India's strategic asset, है ना? So why it is considered as strategic asset? So let me tell you. Body of the answer, strategic asset. Why it is considered as strategic asset? Clear? There are various things, like first important segment that you can mention here, economic. Okay, fine. Economic, under economic you can mention about remittances, investment, है ना? Remittances, investments, trade networks. Clear? Second important thing you can mention about the knowledge. Yes, knowledge is also very important. Clear? Knowledge in what? Knowledge in technology, है ना? Knowledge in technology, research, skills, etc. These things you can mention. Then cultural perspective, like you can mention yoga, है ना, cuisine, cinema, Bollywood, festivals, all these things. Then you can mention it act as a diplomatic tool. Diaspora act as a diplomatic tool, like people to people contact or people to people relation, है ना, advocacy. Then trade or clear. So advocacy, people to people contact. Then you can also mention about, yes, they act as a soft power. These things you can mention easily. Fine. Then you have to bring the limitations also. Now what are the limitations? That they are not homogeneous community. Clear? Not homogeneous community. Then for them, host country interest comes first, because now they are the citizen of that particular country. Then you can mention about the political division. Political division, so also there. Separatist tendencies. Separatist tendencies, like in Canada. Clear? These things you can mention. Brain drain. Clear? Khalistani support. These things are there. Now, what should be the way forward for this kind of question? I know how you are going to write the way forward, that India should strengthen the diaspora engagement, facilitate the investment. They should create a global knowledge networks. They should encourage technology transfer, use cultural diplomacy, protect diaspora welfare, and avoid treating diaspora as political instrument. Clear? So overall conclusion, how you are going to write, that this Indian diaspora should be viewed not merely as Indians living in abroad, but as global network for economic, intellectual, cultural as well as diplomatic capital. And they are going to provide, they are going to provide, you can say, partnership rather than political instrumentalization. This is how you can mention. Fine. Now the last question from GS paper 2, which is related to IR, that is question number 20. China's Belt and Road Initiative has transformed South Asia from regional space into a theater of great power competition. Analyze the strategic implications of BRI for security and regional influence in South Asia. Clear? Now try to understand how you are going to write this answer. This is a wonderful question and this is important for your mains. Most of the time UPSC asks question from BRI. Clear? First of all, try to understand China's BRI transforms South Asia from regional space into the theater of great power competition. है ना? Between China and India. China enters South Asia through BRI. Remember this. China enters South Asia through BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. Clear? Then with this, China gained what? China gained economic presence. China gained what? Economic presence. Now economic presence created strategic leverage. Leverage for whom? For China. Now, so if it creates strategic leverage for China, then India feels insecure. This is how you need to decode. India feels insecure. Clear? India feels geopolitical pressure. And now South Asia becomes a regional or a theater of great power competition between India and China. This is how you should decode the question. Clear? अब लिखना कैसे? How you should write? See, don't merely write China is investing in South Asia, blah blah blah, because that is not the requirement of UPSC. You need to ask, China is investing in South Asia, so what? What does China investment mean strategically for India or specifically for India? And you can divide it into two broad dimensions. Clear? First is security dimensions or security implications. Clear? So what you can do? You can divide into two dimensions. First, security implications. Now what can be the security implications? Fine. Like you can mention about encirclement or economic pressure. This is how China's growing presence around India, it actually creates concerns about potential strategic ring around India. Clear? Like, then you can give the example like Gwadar, in Gwadar, Pakistan. Clear? Then you can give the example of Hambantota in Sri Lanka. This you can mention. Then increasing presence of China in Maldives. Clear? Chinese engagement with Bangladesh. So do not simply call every port a military base. Most of the students, they make mistake that they write that China is creating the military base. No. Use cautious language such as dual use potential. Use strategic access or maritime leverage. These kind of words you should use in the examination if you want to get good marks. Otherwise, forget it that UPSC will give you good marks. Then second important thing you can mention about CPEC and sovereignty. Yes, CPEC and sovereignty. Here. Now sovereignty security. CPEC actually passes through POK region, which India regard as its own sovereign territory. So CPEC has created what? Sovereignty concern, and it is also considered as China-Pakistan strategic partnership. Then you can mention a third implication could be Indian Ocean security. Indian Ocean security. Clear? Now BRI related maritime infrastructure, it can increase the China's ability to develop what? To develop the commercial presence, logistical access, है ना, and it is going to increase what? Strategic influence. And then you can mention about the China-Pakistan nexus. So these things you can mention easily. Then you have to mention what is the impact on India's regional influence. Impact on India's regional influence. Fine. Like it is a kind of for India's neighboring countries, it is a kind of alternative source of finance. Alternative source of finance. Clear? Then you can mention about China's diplomatic leverage. Clear? Then you can mention it actually reduce Indian influence in the neighboring countries. Clear? So it actually creates what? India-China competition. Clear? So how India should respond? So that is why you can mention the India's policy like neighborhood first. How India should respond? India's response. So neighborhood first, Sagar initiative, Act East policy, faster project delivery, developmental partnership, these things you have to mention. And at last you can mention that conclusion that South Asia should not become a zero-sum India-China battleground. India needs to remain the first responder, preferred development partner and a net security provider in its neighborhood. This is how you should write the answer. Fine. So finally we have discussed all the questions from the governance as well as international relations. I hope you understood the demand of UPSC, how UPSC asked the question, how you need to integrate current affairs along with the static knowledge. Clear? So finally we have completed all these questions. I hope now you will be able to write the answer. You should practice, and for like these kind of questions you should have current affairs data also. Fine. So I hope this much is clear. See, in UPSC international relations is not merely about the current affairs. You should have a base of static and then current affairs you can easily connect. Fine. So this is how you should prepare for governance and international relations as well as whole polity and constitution paper. I hope this much is clear. So now I am going to wind up this session. If you have any doubts, you can just write down in the comment section. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you so much.